AM 710 WETG and 100.5 W263PE Rose Hill. This is the Community and Small Business Update with Lee Woodard on Surge Radio.
Good morning, Duplin County. You are listening to the Community and Small Biz Update for Duplin County. I am Lee Woodard, your host. It's a rainy April 2nd. Hopefully you didn't get harmed too much by the April Fool's jokes yesterday. Show is brought to you by James Sprunt Community College, your bridge to success, and the Small Business Center at James Sprunt. I did see on Facebook yesterday that Dr. Rouse bought a new Jaguar in Knoxville. He's bringing it back, but if you continue to monitor the post, it was his April Fool's joke. So hopefully you all have a wonderful April Fool's joke in your past. I do. Time permits, I'll share that one today. Anyway, today we actually have a very special guest today. Our guest today is Ken Santarelli, but not the one you might think. This is not the owner of Surge, but actually his dad. I've had the pleasure of speaking with him for a little over a year as he comes to visit Ken here at the radio station. He's an engineer, but has a background in education, and he and I have had a lot of interesting conversations. And so as we start looking at economic development and talking about it in Duplin County, I thought he had some really interesting perspectives, and so wanted to get him on the show. Ken, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Lee. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. As I've said to everybody, and you've heard me say a few times on the show, about half the folks that come on the show are are native to Duplin County, been here most of their lives, and then there are those who are not native to Duplin County. Ken was one of them, coming from L.A. You're certainly not native to Duplin County. Where were you born?
I was born in Boulder, Colorado.
Okay.
Basically, was not raised there. My dad was a tradesman. He moved around a lot, bounced back and forth between the L.A. area and Longmont, Colorado, which is about 14 miles north of Boulder. So that's largely where I was raised, is between Los Angeles and Longmont. Okay.
Yeah, and you when you graduated high school, where did you go to college? Or you were in the military first, right?
Yes. When I graduated high school, I joined the Air Force. Back in those days, making a choice was better than waiting for the government to give you a call. So,
well, that's true.
Yeah. So I joined the Air Force. Wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. Spent 4 years in the Air Force, tour in Vietnam, some stuff like that. And when I got out, then I started a university at Cal State University, Fullerton. And then transferred over to California State University, Long Beach, where I graduated with my degree in engineering.
Yeah, you're an engineer. And so you served about 4 years in the Air Force. Where were you stationed? You said Vietnam.
Oh, yeah. Let's see. I took my basic training at Lackland in Texas. Then I was stationed at Mountain Home Air Force Base with a tactical reconnaissance unit flying RF-4Cs there. But before that, I went to tech school in Denver, Colorado, to the Armed Forces Intelligence Training School. So I was an intelligence specialist. From Mountain Home, I went to Da Nang Air Base, moved around a lot. I was down at Pleiku, over at Yubon, Thailand while I was there. Then rotated home and then immediately deployed to Guam.
Wow.
And come back to the 92nd at Fairchild in Spokane and served out my term. And then is when I started university.
Okay. One of the things, just as a side note, I've had opportunity to teach with Mount Olive College, and Mount Olive has a lot of satellite facilities. I taught in their business program, taught statistics and research methods. And one of the places that they have a satellite is at Seymour Johnson at the Air Force Base. Mm-hmm. And it was there that I began to understand that the Air Force, maybe more than any of the other branches of the armed service, really has education as a huge priority of serving. And I'm interested to know whether that was true then when you were there. But every base has the ability for you to finish your college degree or finish your master's degree or whatever. It just seemed like it was so integrated into. Was Air Force like that when you were there? Is it just such a huge value on education?
It was. I had opportunity when I was at Mountain Home to get one course, freshman English, but it was more difficult then because we didn't have the internet and those kind of things, So if you moved a lot, which I did when I was in the Air Force, it was difficult. You had to. You could do a correspondence course, for example, but they're a little tougher than some of the other methods.
Well, honestly, I've never taken a correspondence course, but I have taken online courses, and I have found online courses are harder. Seated courses are much easier than any other version, and I would think correspondence would be even more frustrating and difficult.
It is. It's much more difficult, and there's a certain discipline that goes with classroom. That I think really enhances the opportunity to succeed.
Yeah. So why engineering? When you left, I assume you used your GI Bill. You're going to college. Why engineering?
Well, it's very interesting. When I was looking at universities to attend, I just simply went through the college or the university catalog, all the various majors that I could choose, and engineering just was the one that was the most interesting to me.
Okay.
It's just that simple.
Now, did you major in mechanical engineering or?
No, I have what we like to call a boutique degree.
My daughter's working on one of those right now.
But I had started at Fullerton in aerospace. Now this was 1970, and the Apollo program went very south in '69. So aerospace didn't look too promising, but there was an effort by the Hughes, the Summa Corporation, to mine manganese nodules.
Okay.
They were building a ship called the Glomar Explorer to do that. And there were articles in the newspaper every day, on the radio, about mining manganese nodules, which contain a lot of rare metals, and they occur very deep in the ocean, like below 15,000 feet is where you find these things. So corporations all around the world were getting all excited, spending lots of money, and boy, it just sounded like a career opportunity to move into ocean engineering. So that was my degree major, was ocean engineering. The whole thing turned out to be a scam. Because what the Glomar Explorer actually did was go out and recover a Russian nuclear submarine.
Well, that has some precious metals on it too.
Yeah, it did.
As well as some other things on the atomic chart or the periodic table we don't really care about or don't want near us, I guess. But talk a little bit about ocean engineering, though, because I would think that that's becoming popular again today as the oceans are. I look at the oceans really differently in that, first of all, Google is just starting to map them. Here's something that's 2/3 of the planet, and we know very little about it. You and I just talked ever so briefly about why it probably won't work, but nevertheless, we see all the energy that the ocean represents, and could you ever harness that? And then I think people are just starting to understand a big part of the health of our planet is based on the health of our oceans. And so, all of a sudden, I would think it's becoming even more popular. Talk a little bit about the field.
Well, when I went to school, the field was pretty much focused on deep ocean activities, instrumentation, submersibles like the Trieste, for example, that are deep diving. And that's a fairly narrow market for that type of activity. Now, a lot of the work that needs to go on with respect to ocean are, quite frankly, very traditional engineering activities. Civil engineering, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering. Ocean is a little more like aerospace in that it has specific focuses, which narrows the opportunities in the field.
Yeah. Just sort of a tangential comment. What do you think about in North Carolina? I think it will become I think it's a very real possibility. Certainly up around Cape Cod, it's another possibility, putting wind out in the ocean as far as the wind farms and stuff. I mean, if you're not on a mountain, you need to be in the ocean to make these turbines, although England proves that a little bit wrong. But do you think that's a reality, is that we'll start harnessing some of the wind that sits out in the oceans?
Well, it's certainly available, and it's a renewable resource,
Right.
So anytime we can harness a renewable resource, I think it's a great idea. I know where I'm at, we have the Tehachapi Wind Farm. It's about 800,000 megawatts of wind generation, solar, and the north shore of Europe, on the English Channel is dotted with wind power generators that are located in the ocean.
Yeah, if you take any of the interstates in the UK, the M1, 4, 5, 6, 7, any of them, you will see the landscape's dotted with wind. And here in Duplin County, we are solarized. You can't drive anywhere within the county without coming up upon a solar installation. And in fact, the one out by West Park where James Sprunt has a facility, that is the largest solar installation east of the Mississippi. And so it's coming online here in the next few weeks. Duke and will be taking it on. So didn't mean to sort of go down the sustainable energy path, but I mean, when you say oceans to me today, that certainly is part of it. And I can't help but ask one more question. A lot of people, as we have global climate change, regardless of what your position is on that, if temperatures go up, the physics behind water expanding is pretty plain and simple. Water expands when it gets warmer, and when ice melts, water rises. Sea level change is going to be an issue in the east. I know it will be in Galveston and any of those around Texas, but I assume it would be one in California too.
Well, yeah, there are areas that are very low lying out there. Down in San Diego, the Strand down there is just a few feet above sea level, so it doesn't take much of a rise before it has an economic impact.
Yeah.
And what's the alternative? Well, you build levees and things like that, but it's all expensive.
Yeah, well, Northern Europe has gotten away with levees in part because they're smaller.
Yeah.
It's a little hard to build a levee system around the border of the U.S., and, it's interesting to me, the dynamics behind this. The ports are typically at sea level, and so a rise is going to have a rise of several feet. It's going to be disruptive to the ports as far as having to move them or whatever. And then you also have some of your most expensive real estate often sitting around there, whether it be homes or whatever, and now they have to either be destroyed or moved. But I think people don't realize that a 2-foot rise in ocean level would take in Duplin County, for example, parts of Highway 41 would be underwater. And so I think that connection, they think, well, the rich people live at the ocean, and so that's their problem. No, it's not. If you're within an hour of the ocean, you may have roads that are below.
Roads, and then also, there's the erosion issues become very important, because even those areas that are above sea level that wouldn't be impacted by the rise directly will be impacted by erosion. So things built on cliffs, close to cliffs and things like that could come.
Well, in California, that has become a bit of an issue.
It is. It's always been a bit of an issue.
Yeah, well, I guess in some instances, if you live there, it's not becoming an issue. It is a huge issue.
Yes.
And then there's the legal issues of the state taking eminent domain and saying you can't live there anymore. And that's got to be extraordinarily frustrating.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Well, anyway, that was a nice little journey down the sustainability discussion of how the ocean is. How long did you work as an engineer? Because we're getting to, you went into education. What was...
Yeah, well, what happened, I started, when I got out of the university, when I graduated, I took a commission with the U.S. Department of Commerce, NOAA Officer Corps. So I spent about a year as an ensign, as an officer of the deck on an oceanographic research vessel. I was pretty young and single, and I found it to be rather detrimental to my social life.
Imagine that.
Yes. So I left the Department of Commerce and went to work for a company called ITT General Controls. Now, they were involved in various components that are sold to the process industry, the power industry, and pipelines. So I spent about 4.5 years there. I was actually in marketing with them. And that we were heavily invested in nuclear power, and 3 Mile Island came along and shut the nuclear power industry down. And that's when I moved over to Rocketdyne. Now, Rocketdyne is a liquid rocket engine manufacturer, the preeminent manufacturer in the United States, in my opinion. They provided literally all of the engines that took our astronauts to the moon. They had the engines on the Atlas that flew our Mercury astronauts. The three main engines on the space shuttle are Rocketdyne engines, and so forth. And then we also won the electric power system contract for the International Space Station. So I spent 27 years at Rocketdyne working on various propulsion projects and then on the space station electric power system. Along the way, I became a registered professional mechanical engineer with the state. I also obtained my master's in business administration and my doctorate in education, which for those of you who are looking to advance your career, my company paid for those. So all I had to invest was my time.
Wow. That's excellent.
Yes.
And that's becoming more common today. I'm guessing, I don't know, but I'm guessing it wasn't as common then, but it's becoming more common today that businesses will help you with your education.
Yes, it's important for a business's resume, to have individuals with advanced degrees. And education is becoming more and more important. The technology is moving so rapidly, and an educated workforce is just imperative.
Right.
So, but to continue that, I got my degree in education while I was finishing my time at Rocketdyne, preparing to retire. And, I found while I was doing that a position that was open at the time with Cal State University Fresno in Lancaster to develop an engineering program as a satellite campus. So I took that position.
Now, I was going to interrupt you. In your career, you told me you had an hour's commute here and there. Was that at Rocketdyne? Or
that was at Rocketdyne. Actually, when
I was enough to make me leave.
when I was working in Los Angeles, it didn't matter how far you lived away from work. It was an hour's commute. So,
Okay.
but yeah, that was 60 miles each way to Rocketdyne. So I spent a long time doing that. Same thing with when I was at ITT. So I lived out in the desert. We lived out there because we could afford to buy a home there. But finally, I found this job and was able to relocate to where I'm only 12 minutes from home now.
Yep. But talk about your transition to education.
Yes. I was attending my doctorate program at Pepperdine and working with my dissertation chair, and we were trying to develop a topic for my dissertation, and I think I had written about 12 or 13 or 14 proposals. All of them were rejected.
Did it occur to you may have chosen a bad chair?
She was really a good chair, actually. She chose me. I didn't choose her.
Oh, okay.
But when I found this position, she immediately wrote me and she said, "You have your topic." And, an EDD is basically a scholar practitioner. So it was appropriate to use my dissertation to evaluate this opportunity for its viability. So I did a mixed methods study and found that, yes, it was viable.
Yeah, talk about what you're talking about when you took the position, because this is sort of a wonderful culmination of education on the move, sitting, satellite places for them, but also economic development from having industry support of. It's just a wonderful amalgamation of all these parts, which we're going to work into how might something like that work at Duplin County. But talk about that.
Well, it was really interesting because what I found out was that living up in the high desert. Now, for those of you who don't know where that's at, that's otherwise known as the Mojave Desert in California. And we have Edwards Air Force Base there, which is the center for flight test in this country. It's a national asset, could not possibly be replaced anywhere else. We have companies like Lockheed Martin Skunk Works, an aeronautics company, Northrop Grumman, the Boeing company. We have the spaceship company who's getting ready to fly tourists into space, Scaled Composites, X-Core, FiberSat. Going north, there's China Lake Naval Air Weapons Development Center up in Ridgecrest, about an hour and a half north. GE Flight Systems in Victorville, Atomics International, all kinds of, it's very heavily aerospace flight test and research oriented.
Yeah, they're not there because they're hiding. They're there, but you mentioned because of the weather, right?
Yeah. We have 350 days of great flying weather, clear skies, and it's remote enough, that it's not dangerous for a population for doing what's done, which can be very dangerous when you're flight testing a brand new aircraft, high performance aircraft.
They tend to fall.
Yeah, and they have the world's largest runway out there at the dry lake.
Yeah.
So if they do get into problems, it's easier for them to find a spot to sit down where it's safe.
Yep.
So all that is going on, but the high desert is very unique. And the companies, both government and commercial out there, find that when they bring people in from out of the area, they have a great difficulty adapting to the environment. Now the desert, about 4 or 5 hours north on Interstate 15 is a place called Cedar City in Utah, and when you leave that, you drop down into the desert, and that's the last time you see any real trees, unless you like Joshua trees, call them a tree. And you get to, the people get out to Edwards Air Force Base, for example. Typically, they might have graduated from university in May, come out there, they're starting their job in July. It's 114 degrees outside, 150 degrees on the tarmac, and they have a little difficulty adapting, and then they bring their families out, and they have a large difficulty adapting, so they stay 2 or 3 years and leave. And what we find is that it costs an organization 1 to 1.5 times the annual salary of the individual that just left to replace them. That includes all the recruiting, the training, all the things to bring them back up to where they were when they left. So economically, it's very important for organizations to be able to retain employees. And the way they've elected to do that is what we call home growing our own engineers. And that was the impetus that brought first Fresno, who was too small and didn't have the capacity to really support something like a satellite campus. And then I was able to bring Long Beach up, which is a great school. And, they're very business savvy. So it was just the right fit to establish a degree completion program, which means no freshmen and sophomores. All of our students are transfer students. In mechanical and electrical engineering, which was what industry told me in my dissertation. Research were the two primary disciplines that were required.
So you're essentially training the folks to stay.
Yes.
And they don't, when they come from college, they don't melt in the first season. They're already used to and adapted to the environment and the things that are there. So trying to keep your own. And so folks in Duplin County, if you're listening, I think that's something we would like to figure out how to do. How do we keep our own? And I think the partnership is really interesting. This was certainly not something the education system in California did or industry did. It's a partnership with a lot of folks, right?
Yes. We had it when we made the decision with Long Beach to establish this program down at Long Beach. Not only did we have the president of the university, and it's a large university, it's 36,000 students, the provost, the vice provost, our department chairs, deans, all those people were there, but I had almost 40 people from Antelope Valley. Now, Long Beach is 100 miles from where we're at. So we had people from the Air Force, the Navy, the city of Lancaster, our community college, which we have a very strong partnership with out there, business leaders from Northrop Grumman and various organizations. So they all went down to provide that support. And one of the things we did in order to entice Long Beach was we all got together, all the stakeholders, and developed a portfolio of commitments. What is it that we could provide to Long Beach to help them get the program started? And it amounted to about, at that time, the portfolio was about $5.5 million worth of support over 5 years, the first 5 years. And most of that is even continuing beyond that 5 years. And then...
How long has the program been in place?
We're just starting our 6th year.
Okay.
So, but we have commitments going for at least 2 more years. And also with the community college, we submitted a grant to the Department of Education for a cooperative STEM grant. Mm-hmm. And we won that, and that brought in another $1.3 million over 5 years in direct support for the program as well. So, it's very possible to set this up. You just need this strong education, industry, community network of stakeholders to support the program. And then, of course, grants are always great.
Yeah, no, grants are. And I've got so many questions. One of the ones that just leaps to mind is, well, before I even asked it, I did take a look at my watch. I get so engrossed in these conversations, I forget what time it is. And I did understand that Kurt won't be walking in, so someone's going to have to cut me off today. All my cues are missing, but you are listening to the Community and Small Biz Update for Duplin County. The show is sponsored by James Sprunt Community College, your bridge to success, and the Small Business Center at James Sprunt. We will be doing graduation here for the spring. If you are enrolled, you're more than aware of that. But we do have summer programs and stuff coming up, so anyone who's interested, please give us a call. You can reach out through our webpage. You can just give us a call. We'll get you pointed in the right direction. Again, you're listening. My guest today is Ken Santarelli. I'll call him senior, even though I don't think it is junior, senior. But and we're talking a little bit about his migration from engineering into education, and a little bit about the programs he did, because I think some of them could be certainly good fodder for folks in Duplin County to consider maybe some similar types of activities. One of the things you mentioned is your program for engineering really has 2 disciplines. It's either mechanical or electrical, and you're not really teaching the general college stuff. They're coming to you with that behind them, and so they're ready to start engineering when they get there. Does the community in California, I'm not as familiar with the university system, but one of the things that has developed and it's turned into both an economic as well as improving success is you can do your general college in North Carolina typically at a community college and then transfer, or you could do in a program like this, you could do your 2 years at, say, UNC Wilmington and then transfer in. But oftentimes we certainly find that it's less expensive to get to that community college. And typically if you are someone who needs maybe a little smaller environment, instead of starting at a school with 30,000, 100,000 students, you start with less than that. And we've seen a lot of success with students starting at James Sprunt, finishing their general college, getting their associate arts degree, and then moving on. Does the same happen in California? Or are you getting most of your students from a traditional 4-year, or does the community college provide you some?
It's very much just as you described it here. The community college system is very strong. There's over 100 campuses in the state. And they're very good at doing that lower division work. So we work very closely with a number of community colleges so that they're offering the lower division that we need, and that includes all the general education, the physics, the science, mathematics, and also, a modest number of engineering courses. And it's very inexpensive for students, compared to going to university, especially where we live, where the closest university is at least an hour away. So students also have to plan to live there, and then it becomes expensive, even if you're in a dormitory on a meal plan or what have you. Very expensive to go away to college. So even though we're an extension program and our fees are a little bit higher, it's still a great cost trade.
Right. Yeah, and the same applies to folks here in Duplin County. Your universities, whether it be in Wilmington or Raleigh, Chapel Hill, Durham, they're all about an hour away. So we share a lot of those things. And having been at James Sprunt and now more aware of perhaps what we offer, and I have firsthand benefit. Our daughter was blessed enough to go through the early college, and so she graduated high school and also had her 2 years of college done. And I didn't have to pay anything for that, so the economic benefit was obvious. She started as a junior at UNC Asheville, doing well, and so on a lot of levels, that's an incredible process, and with a STEM focus. So even though science and technology and math, she's not her dad when it comes to that. Those aren't her favorite things. She has the expertise, the skills to move through and perform well. So I think going back to your program, you try to sort of balance 50 students, 25 and 25, is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, every fall. We only admit students in the fall. It's a cohort-based program. So our students come in, they start together, they travel clear through the entire program together, and they graduate together.
And you said it's about 2.5 years?
2.5 years. First semester is not every community college that we accept students from has everything we need. So there are a few courses that we offer there to get everybody on a level playing field. And then basically it's a 2-year program after that. It's a great program. We offer our classes Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, which allows our students to participate with industry 2 days a week, even during the academic year. So it's not just a summer internship or something. Those can continue, and we have a lot of our industries that are taking advantage of that. The great thing about that is most of our students that want an internship get one while they're with us, and most generally they lead to a job offer at graduation. So they just move right on and continue their work.
And I asked you, I don't recall, but I remember the percentage being high. The percentage of students who want employment is very high in this program. I mean, if they want to, in the area.
Yeah, in the area, it's maybe 96%
right.
or so. Basically, 100% of our graduates are employed at or shortly after graduation. So it's working out really well.
That's a very enviable percentage.
Yes.
There's a lot of schools that would love to have that as their part of their success, history.
And then the cohort program provides an impetus for students to help each other get through the program. So we have a 97% retention rate. And then, too, we don't have freshmen or sophomores. So the students we get are very serious. They're already pretty well tuned into what's required in education, so we don't have those kind of problems. There is a transition, however, from community college to university. That causes some students a problem. So, they might have trouble with a class or two, which will set them back in their graduation. But generally, one problem fixes it.
Yeah, and I've seen that. And, it's interesting. I've had the opportunity to participate in a cohort when I taught at Mount Olive. Unlike UNC Wilmington, they were in their business management organizational development program was a cohort. And so I taught, as I mentioned, statistics, research methods. Sometimes I was their thesis advisors who read their papers, and then at some occasion taught the business strategy one, which sort of went in that order. And so I would see the same class 4 different times over the a few years, yes. Which was interesting. And one of the things that you pointed out that I think is interesting. To begin with, not everyone was on the same level. When you saw them 2 years later, people started to be on a more similar level, but there was a good competition between those in the cohort, but there was also a lot of help, and having the school come to them as a group and provide them what they needed. They were a pretty close-knit group when they finished up this thing, and there was a lot of support and help.
That's exactly true, and that's what we see, and we also do a lot to stimulate that esprit de corps within the cohort.
Right.
We offer things that they wouldn't get on a major campus. Self-assessments, the Myers-Briggs type indicator. I'm a real proponent of the Strength Finder from the Gallup organization. We use that, on our students all the time. It's very interesting if you know what their innate talents are and you apply whatever objective you're trying to communicate to the student, using those innate talents as a guide to how you communicate with them. It is incredibly effective.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to do a little mentor presentation for the student support services at James Sprunt last week, and that's one of the things that I stress to them. I am familiar with the, in addition to the Myers-Briggs type indicator and some of the others, the Strong Campbell interest inventory and some others. I said, if you can find what you like, and how others like you have sort of gravitated to certain careers, and you start focusing on things that you just sort of have an internal desire to know more about, you're excited about, you'll be surprised how education all of a sudden doesn't become so hard because you're doing what you want to do instead of taking what someone is telling you to take or whatever. You're doing it because there's common interest and, those types of things. And I think you're right. I know I'm old enough to have grown through. I didn't get a lot of input once I chose a major. It was pretty much regimented what I was going to take and how.
Exactly.
And some of them I liked, some of them I didn't like. I happened to be kind of a nerd in that I always liked learning, and so I was, I would do the work. But certainly some classes I was excited about going to, and some classes, oh really, I gotta go, the motivation internally to do what needs to be done and conjure up the discipline that you need in order to finish your work is a lot easier when you love what you're doing.
It absolutely is. And I think coupling that with the opportunity for experience in industry, where our students, for example, are working shoulder to shoulder on major programs with seasoned engineers, brings the reality of what they're studying home, very strongly. So they see what, they're looking at, they're going through their thermodynamics, and they're working with thermodynamics at work or maybe
right.
Electric circuits or whatever, but so they learn that the things that they are learning are important, and that's a key
and
factor.
how it would be applied.
Yes.
Yeah, I know in the Duplin County, it's been an evolution with the early college. STEM was part of the curriculum that's now being rolled out, or has been rolled out to all of the high schools, and now through working its way down through middle school, now into elementary school. And part of it now is trying to not just have that curriculum focus on science, technology, engineering, and math, but getting the interns, even at some early ages, so students can do just what you said, understand why this particular formula or principle, what its meaning is, how you might use it somehow to help you or help your organization.
Right. The application, understanding an application is very important.
Right.
When I grew up, I think we had a larger amount of trust. We would go through school and what have you, and they'd tell us, yeah, you need to study math, and we'd say, okay, that's what it takes. That's what it takes.
Right.
But that's not the case anymore. The younger generation needs to understand the importance of what they're studying, and we do that through hands-on application, through these internships. We have a senior design series that's very industry oriented. So those kind of things are very important to bring home to the students why they're having to do what they're doing, which is important to them.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the part of the success of this program. I mean, you've hit on a lot of things. You're taking students from the area who might not have such a huge adjustment coming from the northeast of this country to come live in the desert to work. But let's talk a little bit about the economic development components of it. And one of the things I think is paramount to your success is industry participation. And I want to go back to, you mentioned you brought a portfolio to the college to show them what the commitment was. And I think that's a great model for, especially as we look at, you can take that, keep that in education, but you can take that also out of education and use that principle. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, that all stems from our two organizations that are very active in the Antelope Valley. One is the Antelope Valley Board of Trade, which I'm a director and co-chair of the Education Committee on. And the other is the Greater Antelope Valley Economic Alliance. And both of those organizations are really focused on developing our local economy, supporting the businesses we have, because we don't want to lose the businesses we have, and bring in new business. They each have a little bit different focus, but basically they're very compatible type organizations that work together. Now, I worked extensively with the Antelope Valley Board of Trade in working to set this all up. The membership is very diverse. We have everything from banks and real estate and restaurants to the major organizations, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, etc., that are participating in the Antelope Valley Board of Trade. It's a great organization. We only have 2 employees that are paid, the executive director and her assistant. Everyone else is a member, and it's all volunteer
Right.
amongst the members. And, being able to access the industry, education, and the community leaderships, the mayors, those kind of people, through that organization was very powerful. That's how I pulled together the coalition of individuals, of stakeholders that had that interest
Right.
at heart. And there was a local champion who's recently passed away, who was really leading the effort for developing a college-going culture in our region. Because when I first got there, the number of students graduating from high school ready to enter a CSU was only at like 18 or 19%, and that's been going up and up and up over the last years. Let's see, I started in 2007 with education, so it hasn't been that long.
Right, and that's not a dissimilar demographic to what you would have here. I mean, one of the things, if someone's listening to the program and go, well, gosh, he's in California, and the cities that he's talking about being remote are more like Wilmington than they are Duplin County. And Duplin County is a county where pigs, cows, chickens, and turkeys outnumber humans, 10,000 to 1 or whatever the actual number may be. So we are more rural. But you've hit on some things that I think are applicable to any type of development, whether it be rural or outside of a metropolitan area. You are in a remote area. We are in a remote area. Any movement it takes a group. It takes a village. You can't have an individual. You got to have a lot of people that have a shared vision that want to see these things and are willing, as you mentioned, to commit their time and energy and expertise to get it done. So I think those things are important. But the other thing that you've done in this program, and you haven't explicitly said it, but implicitly, you focused on what the need is there from an industry perspective. And because you have the aerospace and the other engineering sitting there, which you've chosen this place because they can do their business better there than they can anywhere else. They need engineers. They're an engineered heavy industry. Well, engineers are important here, but they're not as important, or mechanical engineering might be important, but we're an agribusiness environment. We are agriculture. We grow things, we raise things, and we have businesses to support doing all of those things. And there's certainly agronomy and other there are other science, technology, engineering type things that need to be done here. But I think for us to do economic development, we have to steal for some things like programs that you have. And it's, first of all, take a step back and understand what is our strategic advantages from a resource standpoint, and then at the same time, strategically, what are the needs that need to be met to allow these things to happen? And that's kind of what you've done, isn't it?
That's exactly what we've done. And I look around Duplin County, and there is a lot here. A lot of opportunity. You have great transportation available to you. You've got your easy access to Interstate 40 to a port in Wilmington. You have a local airport that's a great business airport. You have your events center. So there's a lot of resources that can be applied once you have the strategic focus as to where you want to go. The other thing we've done out there too is my program's not alone. We also have a program from Cal State University Bakersfield, which focuses on things like business, nursing, those kind of programs that are also necessary for the community. Also a degree completion program as well. So, what you need to do is really assess what are the needs, what are the needs for the region. It's possible that you have compatible needs with adjacent counties, so you could form up a coalition of counties that are all focused on a regional marketing campaign for bringing in new business, bringing in, state resources, perhaps, whatever you focus on. But it requires that organization. And those dedicated individuals and the champions to be able to pull it all together and make it function. And our organization, people pretty much can step into areas of interest because of the way we're organized. For example, we have a legislative committee. I'm on the education committee, co-chairing with our community college president. We have a transportation committee. So there's a whole variety of committees that are formed up that allow people to focus their talents in their special areas of interest.
Right. Yeah, and one of the things I had talked with you about it, in Duplin County, you can certainly say the glass is half empty or the glass is half full. And I think the answer to how you might respond is more based on your personality than any fact or reality here in the county, because there's good data and there's bad data, or there's data that's not so promising, like there's zero growth in population unless you look in the northeast part of the county where the military will actually have some growth. And so you can find data to support whatever opinion you want to have, but to me, that doesn't mean there's not opportunity. There's plenty of it. But you will often hear people ask, why don't we have this here or that here, talking about different types of industries or jobs. And you would think, or my opinion at least, Duplin County is not ever going to compete in making printed circuit boards with other parts of the country, simply because we don't have the either the facilities or the trained workforce or whatever. And you've got it sitting in the Research Triangle Park, so you've got to kind of take a step back and say, well, what do we have those other areas don't have? What strategic advantages are we provided? And I've said from day one, we are blessed with what would appear to be, even though they're not, unlimited natural resources. We have plenty of sunshine, plenty of water. We have plenty of plants and trees. So it doesn't take you long to come to and we have such a temperate season that we can grow much longer than Iowa or some of the others. And so we have the opportunity from an agribusiness. There are a few places on the planet that should be stronger in agribusiness than we are. And then you start thinking backwards from that. Well, what does that mean? We already have a very vibrant agricultural committee. We have farmers growing, but farmers are only going to grow what there's a market to grow for. I'm not going to work that hard I'm not reasonably sure what I'm going to get paid, and I shouldn't. But it does bring to mind, why aren't we generating technologies that leverage those natural resources, or those resources that we have available, in a fashion that is commercializable, so that industry wants to come to us instead of us recruiting them. They go, really, you've got the ability to make this bioplastic, or this ability to whatever the technology may be. And so I think in many ways we've got to show a commitment by setting up R&D centers to go back and task these folks with coming up with ideas and legitimate commercializable science and engineering model that can be that industry would actually pay money for.
Absolutely. And that takes some effort. You have to you have to get with the right people here in the county. and interest them. I know you have some large agribusiness activities that if you can convince them they need to be looking to the future and can get involved, that's an important aspect. And certainly finding a niche, that you can fill, that's unfilled, is very powerful.
Yeah.
But that requires effort. It requires research on, with industry, and it requires the interest of those people.
Right. Yeah, and it's a pretty broad stakeholder. You have to have those who own the resources. You have to have those who have the understanding of the science. You have to have those that are actively involved in the political machinations that are going on around. And so it's a broad stakeholder group, and all of which have interest, but their interest would be within whatever their realm is, and somebody's got to come stitch all this together and say your interests are actually shared, folks. They may appear different, but they aren't.
Yeah, so you have a common vision, and all these special interest groups are focused on that common vision to work together to develop, the result. So you always got to keep your eye on the end.
Right.
And that's pretty much what we've done. But it really works well. It just takes time and an awful lot of effort. And the first effort is to understand where you want to go and get organized to get there.
Yeah. Sitting here looking, we've got about 4 or 5 minutes, I guess, 6 minutes. I got 6 minutes. I haven't had these conversations just in general with you. I think these are some of the things, and these are some of the things that I'm talking about with other folks, and these are certainly things that our community colleges and our county school systems are talking about. So it's early on for us, but we're starting the foundation by teaching folks integrating STEM, and now we're getting other industries in. But I think it takes a little broader focus. We've got to come up with those technologies that use, and I guess in some ways, if you look at the solar panels, we're using the sun, we are, but I'm thinking of the more engineering aspect of it, moving beyond energy, because typically most sustainable initiatives hit a wall because of economics. I can't make bioplastics as inexpensively as I can from synthetic polymers. I can't make because today, look at what your gas prices are. I can get fossil fuel derivatives far cheaper than I can grow starch and make a plastic. And then, by the way, that plastic doesn't perform as well as some of the synthetics. But nevertheless, these things are doable. But the economics always says, hey, it's not profitable. And that's where I think a little broader scope has to be. If you're making biofuels, which for the life of me, I don't understand why Duplin County doesn't lead the nation in biofuels. But if you're making biofuels, one of the conundrums you're going to have fairly quickly once you scale up is you're going to kick off more glycerin than and it's not sterile glycerin, then you know what to do with. So you're going to start landfilling glycerin. Which becomes cost, and you're limited in your markets that you can sell it to because it's not sterile. And if you spend more money on it, then it doesn't make any sense. So what do you do with that glycerin? Well, one of the plasticizers that's used in bioplastics is, guess what? Glycerin. And so when you start looking at them in isolation or separate, none of them have an economic model. But I'm wondering if you started to daisy chain 4 or 5 of these, where the waste output of one becomes a very valued input raw material for the next one, and you're in an area, say Duplin County, where you have the critical mass necessary. You don't have to transport stuff in and out of the county, which you'll lose money on. I wonder if sitting there might be a model. And I think in some ways you're starting to see some of that elsewhere. And I think, there's certainly no reason why those types of things can't be done in Duplin County. The trick is trying to find the right stakeholders to find it economically viable.
Exactly. And I think, I like to think about such activities as looking from cradle to grave, because if you go back to, the base resource and then carry it all through the end of life, then you can scale out this entire sequence that you're talking about, which I think is very powerful. And I wish we did more of it.
It's coming. It's coming. Yeah. It's just those who know how to do that aren't the ones who are doing it. Today farmers have to plant a variety of grasses and other things if they are doing raising hogs and those types of things that stop erosion or whatever. And typically those products have limited value. They're there to serve another purpose.
Right.
But what they're growing needs to perform prevent erosion and those types of things. But if you wanted to make bioplastics, so if you changed what they grew and then it had a value somewhere else. So I think, none of this is a single silver bullet will fix everything type of thing. But you've got to sort of get those who do understand why the farmers are doing, what they're growing with the scientists who understands, well, if you change that, it has a comparable growing yield and it will do whatever and cost, but I could use that plant versus this one. Somehow that level of conversation has to take place before you can actually build a model that's scalable, commercializable.
Oh yeah, if you for example, if you converted all the farmers to growing a single crop, they could waste the soil and everything could go to heck in a handbag. So excuse me. It's really important to have all the stakeholders in such a train of support for an industry to be able to have their input and be able to cooperate and build something that's sustainable. I think that sustainability over a product life, that's the key.
Yeah. Well, Ken, it's been a wonderful time having you on the show. It's been nice to sort of talk through what you've done. And, from the first time I sort of met you, I kind of figured this was a person I wanted to get to know better. And because I knew you'd done some things that we are either doing here or looking to do and thought it would be interesting. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll have further opportunities to talk more.
Absolutely. I look forward to it. Well, folks, you've been listening to the Community and Small Biz Update for Duplin County, brought to you by James Sprunt Community College, your bridge to success. Also brought to you by the Small Business Center at James Sprunt Community College. We are wrapping up our spring seminars, but be looking in the next month or so. You'll see our calendar with all new seminars coming up. Got any questions, give Tammy or me a call. Hope everyone has a great first weekend of April. The rain is supposed to quit, so hopefully you'll have a good Saturday afternoon and Sunday. Everyone have a great weekend.